Well, hello and welcome to the Movie Paradise. I am your host, Nathanael Molnár, and this is Movie Night Tonight. Every single week here, we watch a new film and we discuss it in depth, with each month having a new theme. We are currently in the month of February, which is our month of romantic comedies, and the movie we are discussing tonight is 2011's Crazy Stupid Love. Once again, I'm your host, Nathanael Molnár. I'm joined by a great panel today with me, Johnny Gifford.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Pleasure
to be on the show.
Yes. Crystal Gonzalez.
Hello, thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Thanks for being here. And Matt Smith.
Hello. How's it going?
It is going good.
It's going good?
How's it going with you?
Going good. I'm out doing the show thing.
You're doing the show.
This Movie Night Tonight thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you heard of it.
Yeah, I would hope I've heard of it. So let's start off this discussion, and it is a spoiler discussion. We are talking about this movie as if you watched it with us the other day. So let's start off the spoiler discussion by going around and saying what our first impressions of the film are and roughly how many times we've seen it, starting with Johnny Gifford.
This is the second time I've seen this film. The first time I saw it, it was in theaters, and I was probably 14 or something, 15 maybe. So I didn't really remember it much upon viewing it the second time. The other night, but it's pretty good. I'd say a lot of it has sort of a lot of the cliches and a lot of the themes that a lot of romantic comedies and a lot of classic romantic comedies have, but there were a few twists and a few aspects of it that strayed from the path and made it its own movie. So yeah. That's always a good thing.
Yeah. Crystal?
I was not there yesterday, but the day before. Time is irrelevant. But I've seen this movie probably about a couple times, and it's one of my favorites. I am a complete sucker for rom-coms, and it's probably it's one of pretty unique, so that's what I feel.
Yeah. Matt?
This was my first time seeing it, so I'm the new guy here. I really liked it. It felt it felt more lighthearted than the other ones, I suppose. There wasn't
the other ones we've watched.
The other ones we've watched. There wasn't a moment that was soul crushingly sad. The other ones had their moments of downtime. This is the sad part of the movie. But I really liked how this one, even the sad parts were still not really sad. There was still comedy to it. And it was just sort of feel good all throughout. So that's the first difference that I found from the other ones, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. I've seen this movie. I think this is my second time seeing Crazy Stupid Love, and I really like this. I don't like it as much as some of the other movies we're watching this month, When Harry Met Sally, The Big Sick, and the movie we're going to be talking about next week, which I'm not going to say yet. I'm going to save that for the end of the show. But I wouldn't say I like this as much as When Harry Met Sally or The Big Sick. But what I really like about this movie is that it feels, to me at least, it feels more like an anthology film about different love stories and how all those different storylines kind of intertwine and then ultimately come to a head. And I think that's the part of it. I think the fact that you have that sort of narrative structure along with characters who grow and evolve and change their thinking and who they are as characters over the course of the film. I think those two things work really well for this movie, and it makes it stand out beyond the genre conventions that it does ultimately have.
Yeah, I must say that I like the way that all of the relationships intertwine at the end, and it's not really something that they I mean, I guess it is something they kind of foreshadow, but if you're just watching the movie blind your first time, it's not something you're going to really think about or expect. So that was a twist that was kind of cool, I thought, with this movie.
So there were a couple twists in this.
Yeah.
We first had the twist of the teacher, Robbie's teacher, being the same teacher that Steve Carell's character, Cal, had spent the night with. And so there was that twist, which provided some great comedy in that moment. But that almost foreshadows the fact that there's going to be an even bigger twist coming.
That's true, because that's about halfway through the movie, I feel at that point. So that's just sort of, they build up with a little mini twist, and then they really build up to the final twist.
They kind of entice you with a little twist just to let you know, hey, things aren't exactly what they seem before they completely pull the rug from underneath your feet, revealing, of course, that Emma Stone's character Hannah is actually the Nana that they've been talking about and is Steve Carell and Julianne Moore's daughter in the film.
Yeah, and that's like one thing that I like about this movie is like it doesn't go to the like big things like immediately. Yeah.
It builds it up over time, and it allows it to kind of grow and on its own time as opposed to feeling forced at all.
Yeah, like most like rom-coms.
So Matt, as someone that's probably the only one here who was watching it for the first time, how did you take these twists in the story? Did you see them coming, or?
So when she said she was a teacher, I was like, okay, I thought I had the movie figured out. Like, oh, that's the twist. Because I thought, like, oh, I'm so smart. I figured that one thing. But then I had no idea the other one was coming.
Yeah.
And that really, like, brought me back to, like, oh, I didn't know what was going on at all. Yeah. I was like, I have this movie figured out. And then I did not.
So you knew that twist about the teacher.
I figured, because she said, oh, I'm a teacher. And that, in like, the thing where I go, okay, it's probably his kid's teacher. Like, that seems like a logical.
As soon as she said it, you pieced that together?
When she said teacher, it just was kind of like a bell. It's like, I've heard that before. I've like, oh, it's the kid's teacher. Like,
some pretty good insight right there.
Yeah.
Coming from just, I don't know, understanding, I don't know, watching movies. Just seemed like something that was going to happen. And then, I was actually, I had no idea. I was like, how are they, this has to come together at some point. They're not just going to be two completely different storylines. And like, I couldn't figure it out and I didn't expect it. So that definitely caught me off guard, the big twist at the end.
I really liked how it comes to a head, because we've been spending this whole movie following these characters on their own separate journeys, and we see how they all kind of evolve. And I think I see this movie as a movie about characters figuring out who they aren't and who they are. You have Cal kind of figures out who he isn't. The movie starts off with him getting with Julianne Moore's character saying, I want a divorce. And then he kind of goes through this phase of where he tries to be someone he isn't. And then ultimately realizing who he actually is. And that person he was trying to be, which was Jacob, trying to be Jacob, that is not who he is. He is just kind of the father-husband guy and not the person he was trying to be. Similarly, Jacob has a similar kind of arc where he is this swinger who's picking up, going to the bar every night and sleeping around, and he realizes as the film goes on and he meets Hannah and that relationship starts to form is that's not what will bring him happiness like he thought it would. And so these characters have different character arcs and they grow and they develop over the course of the film, and then those relationships that they form with each other and all the different little relationships that form over the course of the film, it all just comes to a head at the end. And I thought it was very well orchestrated, the whole thing. I wouldn't say this is necessarily I think When Harry Met Sally is like a brilliant movie. I think that is so well done, so well crafted, and I really appreciate that. And same with The Big Sick. I wouldn't go as far to say that about Crazy Stupid Love. I think it's a really good movie. And I think the reason what elevates it from just being a standard basic romantic comedy to being something that I think has more merit to it and a little more substance, even as a fan of the romantic comedy genre myself, is this more complex narrative, are these intertwining and character arcs that come to a head and the way that these characters are developed over the course of the film.
You know, I would say I think they did a good job building the biggest climax that they could have built. Because I think, especially in romantic comedies, this goes for most movies. I feel like it's important to have everything building to this one good climax, sort of toward the end, and that's important in romantic comedies. And I remember when Harry Met Sally, that's a good one as well. When they're at the New Year's.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good climax. And this one, I liked this one because it took it brought everyone together, all the characters into this one scene for this climax, and it brought all the different relationships and all the different character arcs and everything that were all sort of branching off in their own directions, and some of them you think they have no relation, some of them you think won't intertwine or interact with each other.
Yeah.
But then in this one scene, they're all coming together, and then like when all the men are fighting as men do and whatnot. You have one of them like saying like, I don't even know who you are, and he's beating them up, and just like all these character relationships are coming together, even if like they don't know who the other person is. Like that's just like one big climax that they made, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fact, like, I think like this movie succeeds is because it tries to, like, it's not, like we said before, as forced, and like other rom-coms, they have like that one standard storyline, and I feel like it just does it more smoothly, better than others, and I think that's what it succeeds for, because it's like it has that standard climax kind of thing that a lot of movies try to do, but they don't do it as successfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think it definitely does play into, as I said, the genre conventions for romantic comedies.
Yeah.
And all genres of film have different tropes and conventions that are unique to their genre that different genre movies will play into, which is how they become conventions in the first place. But like you said, what I really like about this movie is that while it does have those, there are other parts to it. It's a little bit more dynamic than just those conventions.
Yeah.
And I think that is what helps elevate it.
Yeah.
I think I was talking before about these different character arcs that we have. We see a drastic character arc for Cal. We see a character arc for Jacob. The one I really like Jacob's character arc, played greatly by Ryan Gosling in this film.
Yep.
I was saying while we were watching the movie, I feel like Ryan Gosling is a very underrated comedic actor. He's a fantastic dramatic actor, and he always gets accolades and recognition for that, but I feel like people don't really see him as a comedic actor, and he does a really great job comedically in this film.
It might just be because you don't see him as a comedic character. You sort of look at him and he's like got this, handsome, kind of suave guy kind of thing going on, and I guess you sort of expect him to be a dramatic actor, or at least to act in a more dramatic way.
Yeah.
So I think when he's being comedic, you don't see it coming as much as someone like Steve Carell, where you absolutely see that coming. Yeah,
it's more of it's more dry sense of humor.
Yeah, definitely.
It might just be because people don't think he's acting.
Yeah.
That's probably just how he acts on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how he spends his nights in LA.
But the documentary,
the way he was leading him through the stores buying clothes, I 100% guarantee that's probably how he acts in real life. That's how I see him anyway.
Yeah.
With Jacob's character arc, so an interesting mirror that I noticed in this film, of course. So Hannah says when she ends up going home with Jacob because she didn't want to before, and then she's like, "I'm gonna do it." She says, "I'm gonna bang the hot guy at the bar. That's what I want to do." What's interesting, because the whole movie we see Jacob objectifying women, and that is kind of his thing. He constantly objectifies women, and then it comes to this moment where Hannah is objectifying him, and she keeps referring to him as the hot guy from the bar, the hot guy, and every time she says that, he keeps correcting her and saying, "My name's Jacob. My name's Jacob." He's receiving,
in that.
yeah, he's on the receiving end of this objectification, and he doesn't like it. And I think it's part of that helps change him as a character. When he meets her and he starts realizing kind of the way he acted wasn't really the right way to act.
Yeah, and thinking about it, at that point where she's saying oh, the hot guy in the bar, and he's correcting her, I feel like that's the beginning point, the first point where he starts to change. And then, from there, then he falls for her, and then he becomes a different person, kind of. But that's the first spot where he's correcting her.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And even the part he's like, "Can I put my shirt back on now?" And she's like, "No, you can't." That kind of all feeds into that. And a little bit some mirroring that they do in the scene is Hannah says in this scene that the PG-13 version of the night would be that she gets too drunk, she passes out, and Ryan Gosling will put a blanket over her. But what ends up happening is that they talk the night away, and then he ends up passing out, and she puts the blanket over him. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like little details like this that I feel like helps elevate this film.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Even though I feel like I did kind of see that coming, because when she said that, like, oh, the night's the PG-13 of the night version of the night, I kind of was thinking, like, okay, either that is going to happen or the opposite's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, as soon as she says that, that's like immediately in my mind, I'm like, oh, they're just foreshadowing right now. Mm-hmm. And it's either going to be that or it's going to be some sort of spin on that.
Yeah. It also feeds into this consistent idea we see of characters trying to be people that they're not. She is trying to force herself. She gets annoyed when her friends keeps telling her that she's living a PG-13 life, and she's like, "No, I want to live the R-rated life. Yeah. I want to be the person who, as she says, goes and bangs the hot guy at the bar. I want to be that person." And she's trying to force herself to be this person, and then at the end of the day, she realizes that's not who she is, and ultimately she lives the PG-13 life and the PG-13
there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there isn't.
Yeah.
No, I think what this movie is ultimately trying to say is, and it kind of goes into echoed by Julianne Moore saying, "I think I'm going through a midlife crisis," because it kind of like this movie is like one long midlife crisis.
Yeah, it really
and
is.
Now, these characters go through a moment of panic of, this is not who I'm supposed to be. I need to be this and try to be that, and then realize that's not who I am. I'm actually really this, and this is actually who I am. And everyone has that arc except for Jacob, which is kind of flipped in a way.
Yeah.
And that he's always been someone who he isn't supposed to be, and then he figures out who he is. So he has like a flipped arc, but everyone else has that other arc.
But nevertheless, they're all still going through these crises, some of which are midlife, and I want to call them all midlife crises, but like obviously Jacob is not.
Yeah,
like at that point in his life,
it's a midlife crisis.
That's true, midlife crisis. But I remember Julianne Moore's character saying that in the beginning, and then at the very end of the movie, I was like, I remembered that line, and I was like, wow, this whole movie was just like everyone going through their own midlife crises at the same time.
Yeah.
And then it just like now they're all over and everyone's happy again.
Now, is it a midlife crisis if you go through a midlife crisis every day?
That's a good point.
No, it's just called called an everyday crisis.
It's a midday crisis. Just
midday
around noon, you just don't know what you're doing anymore, and you got to change. And you go to sleep, and the whole cycle starts.
12 to 1 is my designated midday crisis.
I just break down every day.
Do not catch me during that hour.
So, with some of the other romantic comedies that we've seen this month, they cover and discuss specific relationships between people. When Harry Met Sally is obviously between Harry and Sally. The Big Sick is between Kamal and Emily. And this, we don't really have that as much. We have it begins with a divorce, and then Cal trying to, go to the bar and meet people, but that doesn't exactly go where it is, and then ultimately he ends up back with his wife. Jacob has his life that it's going, and then he ultimately meets Hannah. But the movie isn't, for a romantic comedy, it's not about a specific relationship. It's not following any sort of specific relationship. But rather, the movie is kind of like echoing back to what I said about it being like a pseudo-anthology film. It's kind of speaking to love itself. And the movie is about love as opposed to being about a relationship. And I think that's a really interesting way to take the movie. An anthology film about love following a few different people's stories in their romantic outings.
And I feel like it covers a lot of bases with kinds of relationships and types of relationships. Like there are just lots of different kinds. Like you have Cal and his wife who are, going to go through a divorce, and, that doesn't happen in the end. But you have that, and then you have, like, what's the son's name, Robbie?
Yeah.
Robbie in love with, what's the babysitter's name?
Jessica.
Jessica. You have, like, Robbie in love with Jessica, which is, like, the age difference, like, And then you have Jessica in love with Cal, which is like a whole other ballpark.
Another age difference. Just
Yeah.
add more.
Yeah. Like roles are kind of reversed there, and then it's just like many different kinds of relationship instead of like what you were saying. Instead of focusing on one relationship, it's sort of about love as a whole, and that's exemplified by all these different kinds of relationships that you see throughout the film.
I think I kind of like the more hectic sort of. It's not A to B. It's A to B. It's C to D, and then you got like E, F. It's just like all sorts of this lines are going everywhere, and you have to follow it the whole time. And I think it just sort of, it's just something. It's just different for the romantic comedy. Just seeing so many people, and like you're not necessarily rooting for anyone. You're just in for the ride, and you're gonna see how it goes.
Yeah.
And I think with that, the messiness of all these relationships, like Robbie in love with Jessica, but Jessica's really in love with Robbie's father, Cal, and how all these relationships intertwine, as we've been talking about. The messiness of that, I feel like it speaks to kind of just the messiness of love in general. And I think, who is it? One of the characters says in this movie, you can't control who it is you love. And I think that, I don't know, I think all the messiness of the movie, even the title, Crazy, Stupid, Love, I don't know, it's just kind of, it all kind of encapsulates everything that we as humans experience and know and perceive love to be. And I think that's just a really interesting way to approach this film, to approach a romantic comedy, playing on genre conventions while also trying to do something really different.
Yeah, and I agree, like, it basically just talks about, like, the messiness of love instead of, like, how, like, other rom-coms they portray, like, love is, like, this perfect thing, but it's really not. And, like, I like how it also, like, portrays about you're changing for that love. Like, with the character changes and everything. But, yeah.
That thing you said about that you don't know a character it could be, I don't know who it is either, but I could totally see it being the kid, being Robbie, because that kid just was probably one of the smartest, kind of the weirdest, but also one of the most like woke characters in the entire movie. Every now and again, he would just like say a line that you wouldn't expect a 13-year-old to say.
Yeah.
And I feel like just throughout the entire movie, it was just comedic relief at some points. Just like hearing this kid say something like really profound out of nowhere.
I wouldn't say he's woke though, because he was definitely harassing.
Oh yeah. Oh no,
he's a major creep.
Oh no, totally.
I was feeling like a little bit sick during.
Me too.
And then he would also just drop something that would like. The Cal mentions it all the time. He's like, our kid's weird, but he scares me. I was scared of him the whole movie too.
Yeah,
I think a lot of those important lines that Robbie says to his father, like, were going to get said in the movie. Like, they probably came up with those lines and were like, all right, Cal needs to hear this, and that's what changes his direction. And they're like, who do we have say this to Cal, or how do we get this across to Cal? And they're like, it'd be funny? We got the kid to say it. No one will expect that.
They definitely play into that the whole movie with, like, what does he know about love? He's only, like, in 7th grade or anything like that. But
he's in 8th grade going into high school, actually.
That's true. Right.
Learn your lore.
8th grade graduation. Come on.
8th grade graduation.
8th grade, the most important time of a person's life.
Naturally.
Yeah. And that, of course, he gets to make the big speech.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how he does not look like he was like top of his class.
Yeah. How do you go from being the kid that gets kicked out of class for swearing during the Scarlet Letter or whatever, then to being salutatorian?
Yeah.
I don't know how that happens, but I guess that's how he got away with it.
And I guarantee you, schools check your speech before you make it. I don't think he would have been able to get away with.
Dude, that's why he had a dummy speech. He's like, no, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was a whole orchestrated plot.
Dude, he's salutatorian. He's a genius. I don't know what you're talking about.
Apparently, he is a genius.
He's an evil genius.
I mean, I believe it.
Top 10 most diabolical. Diabolical characters. Dude, I thought that was a good joke, but I screwed it up.
Robbie eventually grew up to be a Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb.
Dude, you're right.
No, I could see that.
Yeah.
Dude, origin story.
Yeah. Yeah, I was not a big fan of the Robbie storyline, to be completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I understood why it was there. I just felt like it could have been handled a little bit. And
Yeah.
I guess he the thing is that I guess I wish he kind of learned more of a lesson than he did. Because these characters, like, even when they're not acting the greatest or being the best people, they ultimately learn something by the end of it.
Right.
But I feel like I don't know, that part kind of felt flat to me. Like, he's been harassing her, like, texting her and embarrassing her and stuff. And then he kind of starts to learn, okay, I need to back off. But then he keeps reinforcing it with, well, she's my soulmate, so that means
That makes it okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, that makes it okay.
validating his like
Exact-
straight up
yeah.
harassment.
And then just when you think, okay, maybe he'll back off and be done, then she just kind of throws all that away and is like, here's
Yeah.
the nude pictures. And like,
She puts a stop to that immediately.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't
that's
know.
not what you needed.
Yeah, it just it didn't feel like that ended right.
I think it did seem to me like it was portraying the way he was harassing her as like in a romantic, in a good way.
Yeah.
And it didn't. I don't know. That could just be the fault of the writers thinking like, oh, this is harmless and fine and fun.
Yeah, I guess
But
it
in reality,
stands
it's
out.
just like,
Yeah.
that's not cool.
I guess it stands out more in our post Me Too era. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's not something in 2011. If people saw that, I don't feel like people would have necessarily thought twice about that.
Yeah.
But now we live in a different kind of age where we're more aware of that kind of thing, and that stands out, and that just feels worse than it probably did when the movie came out.
I feel like they're more of just going for, this is a stupid kid that doesn't really understand what he's doing. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of what they're going for. Like, he's a kid, he doesn't understand, and he's just doing like, he's just running on impulses because that's what you do when you're 13.
But at the same
Yeah.
time, they give him all these lines, and he's salutatory, and they make him out to
I
be
know.
so like a genius, and
Yeah.
he's got.
I feel like he was.
everything
I feel like he
nailed
was two
down, so-
characters, but they needed
Yeah.
to cut one.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
like, just much of
They were
it.
supposed to
Makes
be
sense.
twins, but then
There was the good
there was the
one.
budget cuts.
But we all there's like most movies all need that one character that doesn't really change. And that just happened. Like, I get what they're kind of like going for in a way, but I don't think it like they planned it out that well.
Yeah.
Look, this kid's way too messed up. We're gonna need like a trilogy to fix this kid. he's just gonna stay how
Yeah.
he is the whole time, and y'all are gonna have to deal with it. We don't have the budget for that. I don't know.
Crazier, stupider love.
And then craziest, stupidest love.
There
That's
we
the
go.
Yeah.
trilogy right
There we
there.
go.
Hire Matt and I, and we'll
Dude,
write out the rest
dude,
of
all
the
we gotta do
trilogy.
is travel back to 2011 and pitch that idea.
Yep.
Yep.
We'll be set for life.
Just the name, they'll be all over it.
All over, and it follows Robbie as through his journey to wokeness
There you go.
and enlightenment.
Get woke.
Going around real quick, what are your final thoughts on Crazy Stupid Love? Starting with Johnny Gifford.
My thoughts on Crazy Stupid Love are that it's a romantic comedy.
Yep.
And I have nothing against romantic comedies. I don't like seek them out opposed to any other kind of movie, more so. I like them. And I thought this was a good romantic comedy, and it displayed a lot of the conventions that a lot of romantic comedies have that make them good, but it was also its own movie, and it did a lot of things. It had some twists that were unprecedented that I never saw coming. And I like when a movie can just kind of surprise me like that, and I can't guess everything that's going to happen, and that was good.
Yeah.
So overall, decent movie. Not my favorite movie, but not a bad movie in the slightest.
Nice. Crystal, final thoughts?
Yeah, I like Crazy Stupid Love. I was very determined to be on the show today. But I thought it was good, like, with its plot and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Matt, final thoughts?
One thing that I really liked about spoiler to La La Land, the ending of La La Land messed me up. And the fact that they didn't end up together really hurt me. I've spent many sleepless nights just wondering what, the scene where they do end up together just runs in my head constantly. But to see those two, at least in another universe, ending happily together, really brings me to peace.
Who says that they don't end up getting a bitter divorce in like 5 years?
I do.
Statistically, it's gonna happen, Matt.
No.
You gotta be
I mean,
realistic.
50-50.
Yeah, probably with every other rom-com
Yeah.
relationships.
Yep.
So my final thoughts on Crazy Stupid Love are that I really like this movie. Like I said, I don't think I like it as much as a couple of the other movies we've done this month, but I think it's a really, really good movie. I like how it builds the characters and how the characters grow and develop and how they have these arcs. I like how all the arcs intertwine and come to a head at the end. I think in terms of the way that the narrative is crafted, I think it's really different from a lot of other movies. And I like how I said before, it takes on this pseudo-anthology film nature to it. So I really like the movie. Again, not one of my favorites, not one of the best. I think there are some weaker parts to it, and sometimes it does kind of fall into genre convention traps. But overall, I thought it did a pretty good job in standing out and doing something different. So anyways, that is our discussion of Crazy Stupid Love. Next week is our final week in our month of romantic comedies. And the movie we are going to be discussing is 2018's Love, Simon. This is a fantastic movie. I love this movie. No pun intended. And I am very excited to watch and discuss it next week. So that's going to be fun.
I have never seen that movie, but I've been wanting to see it.
I hear that sentiment a lot. I feel like a lot of people have said in response to us doing it next week. I haven't seen it, but I really want to see it.
Yeah,
So
that's the boat I'm in.
I've seen it, and I'm determined to come next week to see it. No matter what happens, I'm still determined, and y'all are gonna see me cry.
Love, Simon is a great film.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to do that next week. Well, once again, I am your host, Nathanael Molnár. I'd like to thank my panel for being here with me today. Johnny Gifford, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nathanael Molnár.
Crystal Gonzalez, thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir.
And Matt Smith, thanks for being here.
It's always a pleasure.
Be sure to like, comment, subscribe for more content. Be sure to follow us on all of our various social medias at Movie Night TNT. That's Movie Night TNT. There you can find our links to our YouTube channels, our Spotify channels, and as well as on iTunes. There you can find all of our previous episodes, as well as new episodes which drop on Saturdays. So you can find all upcoming episodes of Movie Night Tonight dropping on Saturdays. So until we talk about Love, Simon next week, thanks for listening.